Thanks for joining me. This practice is going to be a short practice that'll give you some very simple ways to release the hips and the pelvis. So we're going to start by coming down, and I've got, as you can see, a lovely, fluffy sheep fur, but something padded underneath you is a really nice thing to do for your hips. So we'll come down onto the ground. You're welcome to put something underneath your head as well. When you get down there, just bring your legs into your body. You can take the backs of the hands to your thighs if you'd like, and just make some circles. And in making those circles, feel the back of the pelvis. You can think of your triangular sacral bone rolling around. Notice when one side of the back of the hip bones comes down and the other. Just making some gentle circles. So you're using the ground to feel the back of your pelvis, the back of your hips. Also some gentle movement. And then we pause for a moment and let the hands come behind the thighs. Knees are about hip distance apart, and let the lower legs hang, but push the thighs as far away as you can go without straining your arms. Notice when you're breathing in. And this is our breath in position. As you breathe out, use the strength of your arms to draw your thighs into your body. Breathe in, push the thighs away with the arms. Breathe out, draw the thighs in. So you're using the arms to move the legs. And notice the way that the hips and the low back are responding. So as you're breathing out and drawing the thighs in, your tailbone lifts, you get a little stretch across the back of the buttocks and the low back. Breathing in, you push away. You might even feel your back arch a little bit, the low back. Breathing out, we draw in. And then there's an option to take the legs into a bit of an extension. So that will stretch the back of the hamstrings, which oftentimes the hips like that little stretch too. But we'll do one leg at a time. So as you push away on the inhale, extend just the left leg up. As you breathe out, bend the left leg, draw the legs in again. Breathe in, push away, extend the right leg up. Breathe out, drop it down, draw the legs in. So just alternating one leg extending. Another thing you can do is if your knees are about in line with your hips, you could try taking your knees centered more, or you could even go wider. Take your knees away from the center line. And how does that feel? Drawing in on the exhale. So maybe a little more stretch in the inner thighs if you're wider. And take one more round with each leg, extending and releasing. And then coming back, we'll place the feet on the ground. Right foot will stay on the ground. We'll work with our left hip first. So sense your left hip crease. You can take your hands around the point where your leg becomes your hip. So where is that? And feel the way your pelvis is resting on the ground. We want to keep the pelvis where it is. You could even place your hands on the bony landmarks in the front of the hips. They're going to stay where they are, but you're going to lift up your leg, your foot off the ground, and just make slow circles. And just like with that last one, the lower leg is hanging and I'm moving from the hip crease. Just exploring your range of motion in that hip. So the big, strong femur bone in the thigh can fall into the socket. You've got the ball in the end of the femur bone, and think of that ball just rolling around in your hip. Going very slow, just an exploration. And then we'll land that left foot on the ground and take it slightly wider than the hip, and you might take your right foot out wide too. Feel the big toe side of your left foot. And as you breathe in, push the big toe side of the left foot into the ground and draw your thigh bone across into the right. So now you're going to feel that left hip lift up a little bit and lengthen and arch. Breathe out and come back. So breathing in, extending, falling inwards. And breathing out and back. If you want to add a little more side stretch to this one, as you breathe in and come onto that big toe side, you could reach your left arm overhead. I also like to let my head roll. So feel the whole arch and lengthening through the left side, especially through the hip. Breathe out, let it go. And you might be moving from the foot, even pushing the foot down or lengthening your thigh bone away from the hip. But you could also make this movement from the hip. So notice the way the hip is moving. And perhaps you think of lifting and lengthening from your hip. Can you use your muscles in your outer hip? Engage them and then release them. So this is our internal rotation and adduction coming across towards the center with the hip. And anywhere along the way, if you just want to stop and be still and notice, you can do that. And breathe out and come back. So now we're going to do the opposite. We'll do external rotation and abduction. So with this one, we take the left foot, cross it on the right thigh, and just take a moment to find this space. Take your left hand to the inner left thigh, push the hand into the thigh, but then resist with the thigh by drawing the thigh towards your navel center. And there's just this little game of push me, pull me that goes on, and sense that in the left hip crease or maybe the side of the hip, the back. This should take you right into that hip joint and find where that joint is happiest. Not too far towards your navel center, not too far away. We're going to stay there. Find that position. And then we're going to lift the right foot off the ground. Let the left leg have a ride on the right leg. And you can just make little circles with the right leg. You could also drop it down, lift it up. So one of the things we watch for, though, is that we're not arching the low back, because then you're going to be pulling the muscles in the low back. So keep the low back long and on the ground as you give that left leg a ride. Remember, when we were drawing the legs in the very beginning, the tailbone lifts as we come in. So if that feels better for your low back to keep it long, do that. You could also drop the foot down for a moment, recenter yourself. But just take it for a little ride. And then we'll pause. Before we release this completely, just take the back of the left thigh, cross it on the right thigh, like you're sitting in a chair, and draw both legs in. See how that feels. You can roll around again like we did in the very beginning. Stretching the backs and the sides of the hips. Uncross the legs. Let's take the legs out long just for a moment. We do the magic moment. So both legs long, resting in your body and feeling yourself in your left leg and hip and your right leg and hip. Sensing any differences, being present in those sensations. Like your brain just wants to know what's going on, what feels different. And describe it to yourself. Any weight differences, texture differences, length. Also notice how you're breathing. And then we'll be doing that on the opposite side. So knees bend, feet on the ground, and you want to have your feet a little bit wider than your hips. We'll be working with the right leg this time in that internal rotation. So just sensing the big toe side of your right foot. As you breathe in, tip onto the big toe side and think of taking your thigh bone across the center of the body, like your kneecap is going towards the left corner of the mat, left front corner, and exhale, come back. So the inhalation is the activity, taking it forward. And you'll notice I'm keeping my left leg where it is, so not so much rolling the whole pelvis, but more of a lengthening of the right side of the waist. Left kneecap up towards the sky. And you can take a few of those if you want to add your arm reaching, your right arm overhead. Feel the way the whole rib cage arches and lengthens. Breathe out, come back, release it. Let it find that beautiful dance between lengthening and activating the muscles and releasing and relaxing, letting them come back to their neutral position. If you can feel the action, the movement potential in the hip, see if you can drive this from your hip. So use those outer hip muscles, the buttocks muscles, to make the movement. Think of lifting your hip up and lengthening the right hip away from the armpit. And exhale, come back, release. And option to stop anywhere you want along the way. Just befriending the outer right hip. You might sense the shortening or the tightening in their inner right thigh. And releasing, relaxing. Walk your feet in. So that was our internal. Now we'll do the external with the right. So you're going to place your right foot somewhere on the left thigh. Take your right hand to the inner thigh and push the thigh away while you're also pushing the thigh into the hand. Just creating that little resistance. Like a little tug of war going on. And feel right into the hip socket. Where does it feel yummy for you to have that thigh bone coming right into the hip socket? Where is that for you? How much space do you want in the front of the right hip crease? Or how high is the right side of the pelvis versus pressing it away, making a little more space? And then you've got that good area defined in your hip, in the socket. We lift the left leg up, keep the low back on the ground, and just give the right leg a little ride. Go really slow. So the left leg's got to be active, right? It's strong to give the right leg a ride. Just an exploration. Oftentimes one side will respond differently than the other, be tighter or looser. You're just noticing that and honoring that range of motion. Soft, smooth breath. Restriction in the breath means that we're trying to protect ourselves in some way, so letting the breath flow. And then before we leave this, you can take the left foot back to the ground, take the back of the right thigh, cross it on the left leg. Sometimes just here, feeling those outer hips stretch, that's your starting point. But if you'd like, you can draw the legs towards you, let the tail lift up. Do a little bit of rocking here. And uncross the legs. Take them down. Pause just for a moment's notice. And we're going to end with a little bit of activation. And part of this too is to stretch the fronts of the hips, the hip flexors, which is particularly important if we sit a lot. So in order to stretch the hip flexors, we need to activate the muscles in the backs of the hips. So we go into bridge pose. So feet back on the ground once again, and feel where your feet are touching the ground. And we might want to walk our heels in to where you can feel the heel bones on the ground and your low back is still long. Take your arms at your sides and press the backs of the hands and the arms into the ground, and also push your heels into the ground. And just notice what that feels like. If you push your heels and the backs of the arms into the ground, what muscles begin to turn on or fire for you? And then imagine that you've got a ball between your thighs, or you can even put a block or a ball between your thighs. As you're pushing down with the heels and the arms, hug your inner thighs like you're squeezing that ball. See if you can get those inner thigh muscles to turn on too. And then eventually we'll actually lift. But push your arms into the ground, push your heels into the ground, hug your thighs, and then lift the pelvis off the ground on inhalation. Breathe out, slowly come down, and release completely. Breathe in, push the backs of the hands, the arms, the heels into the ground. Squeeze the thighs. So you feel engaged all around your buttocks, the backs of the hamstrings, even the shoulders by pressing the arms. Exhale, come down, completely release. And there's two ways to lift, and I like to think of this one, I'm lifting more like an elevator. So I'm going to keep the shape of my back. My low back is going to stay in its natural position versus curling it up. So not so much shortening the front of my pelvis and lengthening the back, but keeping the shape means pushing and lifting and keeping that natural curve in the low back. But see what works for you. So you can either lift like an elevator or peel off the ground like you're lifting your tailbone, the buttocks, and then one vertebrae at a time. So that's changing the shape. And which one feels better for your hips? And maybe taking that last one and holding it just for a few breaths, hugging your thighs together. Head relaxed, face is soft. Sense yourself breathing upside down. Feel that openness, like you can breathe right in the front of your hip creases. And breathe out. Release. Let all those big, strong muscles in the back side of the hips relax. You can take your legs out long, shake them out. And just pause for a moment. Gratitude to your hips. You might even place your hands on the front of your belly and breathe into that soft space just underneath your navel center. Think of your hips, the pelvic bowl, as we call it. And breathe into the bowl. That soft, relaxing belly breath. Feel the rise of the belly as you breathe in and the release as you breathe out. So every breath out becomes an opportunity to relax any muscles that might still be in that on position. When we're ready to get up, you can wiggle your toes, jelly roll your legs a little bit in and out, even bop the backs of your knees on the floor, and that'll start to your hips moving, and shift your hips themselves. Be playful. Take a full body yawn. Take a breath in and reach your arms, reach your legs. We're starting all over now. Our hips are happy. Breathe out, let it go. Take your time getting up. I hope that was a nice, sweet hip release for you, and it allows you to go wherever you need to go with pleasure and comfort in your body today. Remember that the pelvis is the center of your universe. Treat it nicely, it'll treat the rest of your body nicely. Peace, joy, love, and light.